All right, so what's that thing they say about best laid plans, mice and men?
Girl, I don't even remember. That was a very long time ago.
So we were gonna hop on Instagram Live and answer questions, but that just didn't happen. So here we are.
It is down.
It's down.
Just right when we wanted to do it.
So, let's see here. I'm Jen Bertrand.
I'm Nicollette Mollet. We're like a little. This is a little
Awkward.
put us off of our
We're off our game,
zone.
y'all. We're off our game.
We were really excited about answering some live questions, so we're just gonna record something here. And it's weird because this video is lagging a little bit, so it's like,
I wonder if it's that.
I'm losing
that
my.
could be it.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so we're just gonna record something so that we don't, we're not. We actually stick to the plan here and answer the questions that you guys already sent us. So.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Nicollette and I are both portrait photographers here in Dallas. Both do predominantly studio work. And as a result, we have decided to put together a workshop on studio lighting, and it's called ENLIGHTEN 2.0, and you can check all of that information at enlightenworkshop.com/enlighten. That is for ENLIGHTEN 2.0. And we have put together this workshop to teach you guys about studio lighting, posing, culling, retouching, styling, the whole nine, all of those things. It's a 2-day in-person workshop. But in the meantime, we wanted to also get on here and just kind of talk to you guys about what some barriers that you guys are saying that you have in terms of studio lighting, in terms of posing and styling, and then also with culling and retouching, and see if we can't help you guys out a little bit. So, I guess without further ado, we'll kind of start in with some of these questions. We'll go through these topics. We kind of tried to group them as best we could into 3 different categories. So the first one being studio lighting, the next one styling and posing, and then the last being culling and retouching. So, yeah, so I guess we'll start with studio lighting. So...
Yeah, so we had a bunch of questions on studio and lighting.
Which is awesome. So the first question that came up was, what gear do you recommend for someone starting out, and do you use a light meter?
So that's a tough one because the first, when I first bought my own gear, I went straight to pro photo, but that's also because I studied lighting in school, and so I also experimented with multiple types of lighting. I would say, I guess, a good starting out brand that I know of is Alien Bees, because it's affordable. And I worked very little with Alien Bees, and they were pretty easy to navigate. I don't know about you.
So, what I will say is the best equipment to start out with is whatever you can afford. Just get out there and do it. Get started. Like, don't let equipment be that barrier, because you can always rent equipment. Do not forget, there are tons of places that you can go to rent equipment. ApertureRent.com is a great place. Borrow lenses. I think there's a couple of other places, but you can always rent gear. If you've got a local camera store, you can rent gear through them more than likely. So there's plenty of options in terms of that. Now, if you're looking to invest in some equipment, I would say 2 really great starter brands are Godox, which I've never actually used, but I have heard so many wonderful things about them. A lot of people love them, and they do really great work, super portable, and there's not a huge barrier to entry in terms of pricing. Now, something that's similar are the Alien Bees, like Nicollette said. I do own Alien Bees. That's what I started out with when I purchased my first set of lights. But I'm old school, so I started out on Novatrons and Speedotrons way back in the day. So,
well, I was going to say, my very first lighting, my dad got me lighting when I was in high school because I was showing interest in studio lighting. And I don't even think it had a brand name on it. Like
it
was
just
so
random,
so janky, so cheap, and I mean, like it was like a super light too. It was like this thing like this, but it was like a toy, and it had two stands that he got me, and but I mean, the point here is that it really doesn't. When you're first starting out, it really doesn't matter, because what's important is that you are exercising that hunger, that drive for creativity and inspiration. Just get it out. Don't even worry about the type of equipment you have. Just like work with what you have.
Absolutely. And I do shoot pro photo these days. I do still shoot with my Alien Bees and Einsteins as well. They're still very great products. I shoot them on location and in studio. So they're really, really great. What I love about them too is that they do hold their resale value. So if you do decide to upgrade, you can sell them on eBay and pretty much get back almost everything that you paid, right off the bat, because people will buy them up. So that is also a nice thing about that. As far as a meter, I learned studio photography using a meter, but I rarely use it anymore. I do teach people in my ENLIGHTEN 1.0 class how to use a meter, because I think that it's a really great way to start to make that connection between your light output and your exposure, and really kind of understand it in photography terms. But mostly I've gotten to that point where I kind of know what I'm looking for, and I will use the back of my camera and my histogram to kind of figure out my lighting scenario. But that comes with time. But I do recommend, if you are starting out, it's a really great way to be able to, see your light in photography terms. So,
and what I have to say about meter is I remember learning how to use a meter in school once, and I never so what you'll learn about Jen and I is that I am very not technical, and it sucks when I'm like trying to teach, because like people have these questions about like the technology and like numbers and stuff, but
oh, numbers.
I'm very much about what I can see on the back of the camera. That's terrible. It's so millennial. But meter, I've just never been able. I personally have felt like when I've used a meter, it's just kind of like I just want to toss it back and just look at the back of the camera. But it is good to learn how to use a meter. I will say, like if you want to work with commercial clients, there are going to be people who are going to want some professional,
image. Well, I mean, when you're working on a commercial shoot, you don't have time to dilly-dally with your lights. A lot of time your talent is on a timetable, and time is money, like they say. So you
just get it right the first time.
You've got to get it right. So if you're doing something along those lines, having a light meter definitely helps. And again, too, if you've got a setup and the light is just not doing what you want it to, it's not matching what you're seeing in your head, a light meter is a really great way to help you kind of dissect that and figure out, like, okay, what's actually happening in terms of exposure, and why are these lights not doing what I want them to do? So,
and also one more thing. I also have been doing this for so long that I'm used to my lighting setups and I'm used to my settings, and so I already know how to go straight to what I want to get. So that's another thing that comes with time, is just knowing exactly what you already know what you can do.
Yep. When you know your gear, you know your setups, and you can pretty much get it in the ballpark, and then 2-3 shots later, test shots, you're good to go. So that just comes with time and experience.
That was question number 1.
I know. We're going to be here for a while.
This is fun. Okay.
So let's see. Right. Number 2.
All right. So what's your go-to? Umbrella, beauty dish, shoot through versus reflector?
So for me, it really depends on the image that I'm going for. 9 times out of 10, though, I'm going to be shooting with some sort of softbox, more than likely either 2x3 soft boxes for either just very, very even lighting, or I'll have one as kind of a key light, that main light, and then the second one is like a nice fill and have them probably a stop to maybe half a stop difference in terms of light, just to give a little dimension, a little bit of shadow. But if I'm not shooting with that, I'll be shooting with a 5-foot octabox with a fill, more than likely. And for a long time, I shot with the Westcott Apollo. What was it, the 43-inch octabox. It's their Apollo, which is really awesome. I still love that. But again, it really depends on what image I'm going for and, kind of that mood. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, yeah, I'm shooting with a softbox. I really love that soft light.
Same. So I would say my go-to is this guy right here. The
That's
big
your
softbox.
That's your 5-foot octabox right there.
Something like that.
And then
and then this one. This one is like backwards. This one I usually so I like to have that one facing downwards on a white backdrop. Oh shoot.
Keep going.
Okay. Oops. It's not like we're even live. Okay. So I like to oh, this is tripping me up. Okay, so is it
we could totally split this up. I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, there it goes.
There we are.
Okay. So I like to have my big softbox right above, kind of like cat corner. I don't know if that's the right word. Corner upwards and downwards on the face a little bit. So a really big, soft, broad light. And then I like to have a big, soft, broad light also facing downwards on the white backdrop, so it kind of bounces up. So it's nice. It's a nice soft fill coming up. So I would say that's my go-to. So softbox is for sure for me too.
Yeah.
What do you think they meant by shoot through versus reflector?
So shoot through. Well, this could go any number of ways, but shoot through umbrella, shoot through in terms of. Well, I guess not really with the softbox. The nice thing about the Apollos is that you could bounce that light into the Apollo, and then it goes out through the diffusion, as opposed to like a regular softbox where you've got the light in the back and it just shoots straight through. In terms of umbrellas, I usually would use like a shoot through umbrella unless I'm shooting maybe like a larger group of people, and then I would do that bounce and reflect it. Maybe she also means like a silver reflector, like a 7-inch reflector, which creates like a very, very harsh light, which is awesome. That's a lot of fun. It kind of gives you that like paparazzi look that's real big right now in a lot of fashion magazines.
Or it can. It's one way to get that look.
Yeah, that you'll hear it referenced as a set like a reflector or as a can. So if you hear that term can, that's usually what they mean.
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I'm learning stuff too.
Yes. So, like for instance, a beauty dish is technically a reflector, but there's it's designed for a very specific look, which is to get a lot of those really beautiful highlights with specular light on the skin, and it's designed to just make that skin really, really glow.
It's like a soft and a harsh light in one.
Yes, it's a nice kind of in between. But that's what is typically used for most like makeup ads, especially like if you see like CoverGirl and Maybelline, those ads.
Yeah, because it's still really soft, yet it shows detail in the skin.
Mm-hmm. So I do occasionally use a beauty dish, just depending upon the shoot again. But I would say 9 times out of 10, yeah, it's going to be something like that. Mm-hmm. So
next question is pretty much the same.
Let's see here. So one of the questions here is about not knowing which lights to use and not getting shadows.
I would say, I mean, that's a question for the workshop, because that's going to be something we're going to have to demonstrate for you guys. But I guess my advice to that would be, in not getting shadows, just really try to fill those shadows. Fill it with reflector, or fill it with another softbox that's kind of further away and downwards. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it really just depends on what shadows you're talking about as well. But typically, to knock out any sort of shadows, you're going to have to add light. Mm-hmm. Period.
Or unless you're talking about backdrop. Now, if we're talking about taking away shadows from the backdrop, you got to have the subject further away from the backdrop so that they're not casting that shadow on it.
Yeah. And, and part of that is
the next one.
Part of that as well, there's a couple different ways to get those shadows off the backdrop, but the quickest way to do it, is just move your subject closer to the camera, away from the backdrop to knock out that shadow. And in terms of shadows on your subject itself, there's going to be fill light, or, also paying attention to the angle of your light. So if you've got that light real far off to the side, of course it's going to cast shadows on the opposite side of the face because you have, your nose, you've got three-dimensional objects that are getting in the way in the path of that light. So, moving that light kind of around a little bit more to fill in is how you would do that, or add in an additional light or some sort of a reflector like Nicollette said. So...
still not working.
Still not working. No.
Whoa. Okay, sorry.
So let's see here. The next one says, it's expensive and I'm broke, which I think we kind of touched on. As a barrier for entry, rent gear. Rent gear.
In the beginning, it's going to be...
That's...
well.
And you can, if you really want to shoot in studio and you have a very, very... small budget, you can work with a speed light
and available light too. That's a way to start your business.
But in terms of like studio light, if they're going to be adding in, artificial light and wanting to work in the studio with artificial light, I would say one of the cheapest way to go, looking into some Godox lights, renting equipment, or even a speed light. Like you can do so much with a speed light. And, the Apollo softbox, which is, I think, $125 for a kit. And I think in that kit comes a stand even. So there's a lot you can do with very little. But, in that case, I would say spend your money on the education.
Yeah, good one. Here's a quick tip for speed lights. Okay, put the speed light up, kind of angle it kind of this way towards kind of like that way. And then have a reflector right above it, or just a white card. Literally, you can go to Michael's and get a huge piece of styrofoam board, and then just kind of have it slightly over the top, flash it, and it looks like a softbox light.
Yep. So just bouncing that light, easily bounce light, no problem. So there's a lot you can do on a little. So don't let being broke get in the way, because we're all photographers and we're all pretty broke.
We all started from the bottom.
Now we're here. So let's see here. Next question. How to make the most of one light?
One light is pretty much what I do most of the time, honestly. I do use just my one big, broad, softbox light. And what it really does, when you have a big, broad, soft light, you're not gonna have harsh shadows. It's gonna be a really pretty dramatic light. And then what you can do is have a reflector somewhere. Now, I typically don't use a silver reflector. I feel like it's too bright. So I'll do just like a white card, just something I get from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and I just have it underneath their face, and it just has this really pretty soft kind of
fill light. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do with one light, and again, it really depends on what kind of light you want to create, but for maximum versatility, go with a soft light, some sort of large softbox or octabox. I know Westcott also makes, and you can use these with speed lights. The Apollo series is awesome for beginners because they basically open up just like umbrellas, so they collapse like an umbrella, so they're extremely portable. They are extremely affordable, and you can get some really great light using just a speed light. I did that for a long time, especially when I was shooting weddings. It would be easy to set up and tear down for portraits with the bride and groom, or even, the family formal portraits. It'd be really easy to set up in a church, in a sanctuary up there at the podium, just really quickly, and then tear down really fast. But you're going to get a lot more room for error the larger that your light modifier is. So, learn what different light modifiers do, and figure out what kind of light you want to create. Do you want to create hard light, soft light? And then find that light modifier that's going to give you that versatility. So let's see here.
Okay.
Next one.
How would you light 14 people in an executive team group shot? I've done that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you go ahead, because I've got my answer on deck. But
so I only have 2 lights, and I can also be a cheapo when it comes to like renting and stuff. And so I try to do the most I can with what I have. And so literally all I do is I just have 2 of my biggest soft boxes just like right next to each other, right in front of them, like looking or kind of downwards at them. And then on Photoshop, I just try to brighten up the darkness a little bit, because you're not going to have a reflector that's big enough for that many people. So
I
also white backdrop. If they're on a white backdrop, that helps too, because that reflects.
Yes, absolutely. So 2 light sources is definitely going to be your key to this. 2 light sources, and here's where we're going to get technical. I'm the technical one, which is the inverse square law. So I won't go into too much detail on that, but you can Google it. There's tons of tutorials online about the inverse square law, and I also go over it pretty extensively in ENLIGHTEN 1.0. But basically the idea is that whenever you do have a large group of people, you're going to want to back those lights up away from them and then increase your exposure. So, if you're shooting a group of 14 people, you're going to want to make sure that everybody is in focus. So there's going to be people that are going to be stacked, right? Because they're not all going to be in one straight line. You're going to have people kind of layered, here. So you want to shoot at nothing less than probably 6.3 f8. I mean, I would shoot at f8 just to be, sure. And that's at a minimum. So,
so the more light you have outside of the camera, the better.
Yes, because then you can shoot at f8 without blowing your ISO out completely, and not having to also drag your shutter at all. So, I mean, inevitably in 14 people setup, somebody's going to blink, so you're going to have to shoot a lot, and you're going to have to shoot quickly. So 2 lights, absolutely, like Nicollette said, 1 on each side. I would have them, at the same power, or if not at the same power, only maybe a quarter, half stop difference, just to give a little dimension, but making sure that everybody's pretty evenly lit by bringing those lights around so that you're not getting any of that side shadow. You want to make sure, like she said, kind of bring them towards the front, so you're filling in close together, so you're filling in all of that light, those shadows.
Because, you'll get the weird nose shadows on each side.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one. How to get your light to look beautiful and not harsh or hot.
All right.
So, you want me to go?
Sure.
So,
how are you doing this?
I would say it's going to be a combination of things. One is going to be your choice of light modifier, okay? Your lights, the larger your light is in relation to your subject. Yeah, over there, over there. The larger your light is in relation to your subject, the softer that light is going to be. So going with a large modifier is going to create really nice soft shadows. The closer you bring that into your subject, the softer that light is also going to be. The second thing is, and this is a big one, is feathering the light. So making sure that the hottest part of that light is not on your subject's face. That is probably the biggest mistake I see people make when they're getting started in studio lighting, is they point the center of that light straight at the subject's face, and what that does is puts the hottest, harshest part of that light right on their face, and everything else that's around them, is that really soft light. So if you feather that light, to where just over here, these edges of the light right here are what's landing on the face. You're going to get beautiful, beautiful shadows.
And that does create beautiful shadows. But if, let's say, you were to have that just facing directly on them, there are ways to also taper that harshness down by bringing in fill light and then kind of bringing up your aperture so it's not so, blowing it out. You have other sources of light also, tapering that down a little bit.
And exposing for those highlights.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. But if you want just a real quick fix, just kind of feather that light a little bit, like Nicollette was saying how she raises her light up and then kind of points it down and then uses some of that bounce. That's a really great way to feather that light is, just kind of by angling it down just a little bit. So you get these beautiful shadows underneath here, here, and here. And then taking it, from there, everything else just kind of fills in really nicely.
Good job at keeping up with.
I'm trying to go while it's
lagging. It's confusing me.
Let's see.
I do have one thing to say about it, but I wonder if this is not even gonna.
I don't know.
I think it's actually lagging.
I think this is all your fault.
This is all your fault. What I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Okay, here we go. So what I just want to say, when I started to really think about changing my lighting, and I was like, how am I going to get this beautiful soft light so it doesn't look so amateur? I would start noticing when we would be in restaurants or like on location, noticing when a light looks beautiful. So if, let's say, you're next to a really large window, like a frosted window, it looks really beautiful, and you got to notice, like, why does it look beautiful? Well, it's huge, it's frosted. Mm-hmm. So it's like softer, broad light. It looks beautiful. And
very
then, of
diffused.
Course, yeah. And of course, if you're in a room with like a really small, like a little light, it's going to be like a harsher, uglier light with like a shadow. You know what I'm saying? So just notice ambient light. Why? Like, how can you achieve the light that you want, that you see in real life?
Yep.
All right.
Let's see.
This
here.
is so much on just this.
I know. We may have to just break this up.
Yeah, we're already 27 minutes in.
Wow.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Right.
So placement and light patterns.
We've kind of already touched on that.
Quite a bit. And, to that point, what I would say is study photography in terms of look at ads, look at magazines, look for
try to think about
things.
How they got there.
So the three things you want to look for are your highlights, your shadows, and then the catch lights, which are the little bright spots in the eyes. That will tell you all the information you need to know about where those lights are, how many lights there are, and that's assuming that they didn't go in there and touch out some of the catch lights, which some people do. So if an image looks a little surreal and it's not making sense, chances are they may have gone in there and post-production and kind of tinkered with it a little bit. But
I don't know why you do that. Catch light is beautiful.
Yeah, some people, they do that. But so the key is, in terms of learning light patterns and where to place your light, study photography. Look at it. And every time you look at it, look for the catch lights. Try to, ask yourself how many lights are here and where is the direction of the shadow and the direction of the highlights. Because if the highlights are here and the shadows are falling here, then you know that light is over here. Mm-hmm. So
that's exactly how I started also noticing, like, fashion magazines, you'll see one big round one on the very top, and then you'll have like one smaller round one on the bottom. That probably means that that's a light or a reflector reflecting on just like with one light.
Yep. And I mean, and the same thing. So if you are a natural light shooter, look at the catch lights in your subject's eyes when you're out, photographing out on location. When you get back and you're culling through your images, chances are if you zoom into those eyes, you'll see that little half moon kind of look at the bottom because you're reflecting that light into their face. So that's that. Let's see here. Knowing what to buy.
Kind of touched on that too.
We kind of touched on it, but what I will say about that is to figure out what it is that you need to buy, figure out what kind of light you want to create. What kind of images do you want to create? That will help inform you of what to buy. what, do you need something that's going to be super portable? Is portability not an issue because you're just going to be shooting in studio? Do you need to do a combination of both? Those sorts of things. And then talk to a gear expert. And I highly recommend John Scott at Roberts Camera in Indianapolis, Indiana. He is absolutely phenomenal, and he can work with you directly to chat with you about the equipment that you do already have and what you might need to fill in with your gear to create the images that you want to create. And if anybody ever has any questions about that sort of thing, you're more than welcome to message me on Instagram or shoot me an email, jen@jenbertrandphoto.com, or even hello@enlightenworkshop.com. I'm always happy to help people out with that because I know that can be overwhelming.
And please, this isn't live, unfortunately. We were hoping for questions to be popping up as we were talking. But please feel free to type in your questions in the comment area when we post this video too.
Yes,
so
because we're
it's always good to know.
Yeah, and always happy to answer questions. Yeah. So, making it look natural and soft.
Noticing that natural light everywhere you go. See what light looks beautiful to you, and then notice why it looks beautiful. Well, it's a big, soft source.
And like Nicollette touched on earlier, and I kind of mentioned this, which is the lighter or the larger your light source in relation to your subject, the softer that light is going to be. So, like she kind of mentioned, like a pinhole, that's going to create a much harsher light. So knowing your light modifiers, soft boxes, are going to give you that really soft light because they've got that diffusion panel. So again, it's creating that large light source by taking that light from your light head that's small and then diffusing it through the front of that panel right there. There we go. And so it creates just a nice broad flash of light. So that's a really good way to do that. And then in terms of making it look natural, that is going to be one, kind of controlling your shadows, making sure it's not too harsh in relation to your background, and two is balancing that light, whether through fill or just even balancing the light with the ambient light to make it look natural.
Yeah, and so you'll see back here, this is where my studio is. A lot of times I will, during the daytime, I will have a lot of light and then leave these blinds back here open and close these two. And then that kind of puts just a little bit of light on that backdrop to kind of help me light that backdrop up too. So that kind of gives that a natural light look too. And I feel so when I do my two lights on one side, also where the window light is coming from, so it's all on this side. Oh my gosh, it's tripping. When it's all on this side, it's going to look like all one big broad source. It's going to look like a lot of window lights. So,
all right. So I guess our last one in terms of light, we may need to break these up into different videos. So having consistency from photo shoot to photo shoot. If someone, let's start with that because then it kind of goes into a second part. So consistency from photo shoot to photo shoot.
I would just say experiment in the beginning and learn what you really like, what works for you, and then just continue to do that and find different ways to make your images unique, but continue. For example, I feel like the way that my photo shoots look, and it's hard to distinguish why my pictures look like mine, but I think the things that I've kept consistent to is just the fact that I only have two lights, and I always make it work with two lights or one. Another way to have consistency is the retouching, honestly. Having your same global layers and edits that are always consistent, always the same. And again, that takes experimentation and learning what looks good for you.
Yeah, and from a technical standpoint on that is write down and document your setups. If you're finding that you're having issues with consistency, take a picture of your behind the scenes and also get a dedicated notebook. So I bought a moleskin notebook that was like this 8.5 by 11 or like an 8 by 10 moleskin. It's got a really nice cover, and the reason why I did this is so that I would have one notebook and wouldn't try to write in like 7 different notebooks, but this is my go-to lighting notebook. So what I do is, especially if I've got a client, like a commercial client, where I'm going to be doing a shoot over multiple days and I need to have the same lighting setup, I go through and I write down every single one of my settings. So what is the flash power on my heads? What modifiers am I using? What, of course, is my ISO, my shutter speed, my aperture, what lens am I using? And then what I even do is I will use my own foot, because I'm not going to bust out a tape measure, but I will measure with my own feet the distance between my lights to my subject, and then my camera as well, if I have to get it pretty precise. And then I just do a diagram. So on that notebook, I write down all of that information and keep it with me. So if you're somebody who's really having issues with consistency, maybe that's something that you can do, and that way, if something does change, you can see what that change is doing. And then, like Nicollette said, experiment with that, and then practice. You have to just do it, experiment, but do it over and over and over again. That's the only way you're ever going to get better at it.
As you were talking about that, writing in the notebook, it reminded me of, a couple times when I've worked with Mint Dentistry, we've done a lot of similar setups, like with the staff. For example, we do a lot of like internal marketing with them. And so I remember the first one, we had ideas like, well, let's just kind of keep doing this with the staff. It's really fun. They love it. I remember I have my signature light set up, but then I also was like, I don't remember my settings. It needs to be exactly the same so that I'm not switching it up or whatever. So I would go back into, I use Bridge. So I would go back into my metadata and see what aperture I shot with, and you can see all those settings in your camera and in the images on your metadata. So,
but your metadata will not tell you what your light power was at on your
So that's
on your
like,
heads.
That's
so you got to know. You're gonna have to write that stuff down because your camera will not record that information. So, the next part of this question is, if someone wants the particular light setup from another image recreated in their images. So again, that goes back to, I think, experimentation, also knowing your equipment and the practice. And sometimes you can get something that's like very similar too. But if you have trouble remembering your light setups, write them down and take pictures of your setup and keep it with that client in your client files. So like say you have, Jane the Senior, and you've done a setup in Jane the Senior's file on your hard drive, create a separate folder that says setups. Take behind the scenes photos of your setups from different angles, and that way you remember it. And just keep that as a running log, and you can also use that to help you if you get stuck in the future. You can start having like a list of different setups, like go-to setups, until you start getting more comfortable with your lights and know your lights inside and out, and can kind of just go on the fly. But that's a really great way. Is just document what it is that you're doing.
And so what this question, let's say a senior came to me and was like, I love this photo. Can we kind of recreate this a little bit? And something that Jen and I both happen to do, which makes it perfect for our workshop because we have a similar pre-planning process, is we do Pinterest boards for our clients. And so a lot of times what we are doing is kind of recreating this vibe that we've curated. And so let's say, we're looking at an image and it's got, let's say, a studio image. What I typically try to do is I'm like, okay, well, it looks like they've got one light source because the shadows are super dark on one side. They've got a white backdrop, so that's really bouncing those lights up. And just kind of, again, looking at those catch lights in the images and seeing how, just trying to notice where that light's coming from and what's creating those shadows, and just keep tweaking with the light until you get that look. And then also think about, in camera, what it's going to look like when you edit it, when you turn it black and white and add some contrast. Is it going to look just like that Pinterest photo? So
yeah. So that's pretty much, we are at almost 40 minutes with just the studio lighting. So I guess we'll probably do questions. Yes, really great questions. Keep them coming too to us. Feel free to message us. My Instagram handle is Jen Bertrand Photo. And you are at...
I have 2 Instagrams, but I'm gonna post all this on my Seniors by Nicollette Instagram and stuff.
And also, you can reach out to us at enlightenworkshop.com. You can fill out the contact form, or you can shoot us an email at hello@enlightenworkshop.com. We do have 2 workshops, and there are still seats available to both. We have them this year, June 12th and 13th, 2019, and then again in September 14th and 15th, 2019. So that's Enlighten 2.0, and that is where you will get Nicollette and me teaching you all the things. So we'll go into a lot more depth.
A lot more hands-on.
A lot more hands-on, yeah, because it is an in-person workshop. So we will go hands-on in those workshops and go over studio lighting. We're going to talk about the pre-planning process. We will talk about culling your images, also doing retouching, styling, posing, the whole 9. And at the end of it, we're even going to do a photo critique for your images to help you really learn. So yeah, so hit us up with any questions. Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. And
yes, these were so good.
Yeah,
I just want to
keep them coming. I know. So we will see you in the next
video.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.